I'm 76 now, and I've learned that the worst betrayals don't always arrive screaming. Sometimes they come wearing your own family's faces, smiling across your kitchen table, calling you mama, with a softness that feels like love until you notice the blade hidden behind it. I used to think I knew what pain was. Losing my husband at 47 taught me grief. Raising 2 children alone taught me endurance. But what my son did to me taught me something else entirely, how cruelty can wear the costume of practicality, and how a woman can survive it without losing her soul. When my husband died, the world turned quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like a song cut off mid-note. One day he was laughing in our driveway, holding a cracked wrench and pretending our old Ford was going to outlive us both. The next, he was gone, heart attack, sudden, tidy, cruel. There wasn't time for goodbyes or last words. There was just the hospital hallway that smelled like bleach and burnt coffee, and 2 small hands in mine, my boy, Lucas, 11 years old and already trying not to cry, and my girl, Mariah, 7, wiping her nose on her sleeve because she hadn't yet learned sorrow's manners. At the graveside, I remember the wind pushing my black veil against my cheeks, as if it wanted to wake me from the nightmare. I remember looking down at those children and making a promise that was less a vow and more a sentence. I said to myself, out loud in my head, I will do this. I will be both parents. I will fill every empty corner he left behind. I will make their lives so sturdy that grief won't be able to topple them. So I worked. I worked like a woman trying to outrun a flooding river. I took on extra shifts at the county clinic where I ran records and schedules, the kind of job that doesn't look heroic to anyone but keeps a building alive. I packed lunches at 5 a.m. Ironed uniforms, sat through school concerts half asleep with pride so bright it kept me upright. I learned to fix leaky faucets with a YouTube video and a prayer. I learned to smile through exhaustion because children don't need to see the cracks in the wall when they're learning to build their own rooms inside their hearts. This house became our little continent. A modest, stubborn house with a creaky porch and a lilac bush by the window. Not a man. Shown. Not a dream home from a magazine. Just ours. The kitchen had scuffed tiles and a table that still bears a burn mark from the time Lucas tried to make ramen at 13. The living room smelled permanently like cinnamon and old books. On summer evenings, we'd open the windows and let the world drift in: crickets, distant laughter, the low murmur of neighbors watering lawns. I thought that kind of home builds gratitude. I thought love, poured in day after day, becomes a foundation people stand on with respect. I did not realize love can also become a currency some people learn to spend without paying attention to whose pocket it came from. Lucas grew up first. He was smart. Sharp around the edges, always thinking 2 moves ahead of the room. That used to make me proud. I thought it meant he'd be protected in life, that he'd never be fooled. He went into finance, climbed ladders as if they were made specifically for his feet, married a woman named Celine who had the kind of polished smile that looks friendly from a distance and transactional up close. Mariah, my gentle child, made art for a living. She was the one who used to tuck hand-drawn flowers into my purse, little paper hope notes that I'd find later in the grocery store, and start crying in front of the oranges. She stayed softer. I used to rely on that softness the way a tired sailor relies on a lighthouse. And then, slowly, my home stopped being a continent and started being a target. It began with Sundays. I clung to Sunday dinners the way some people cling to rosaries. Not because I was lonely, though, Lord, I was lonely, but because I believed family needed rituals the way plants need water. One roast in the oven, a pot of rice, green beans with too much butter, and my husband's old blue plates laid out like a little ceremony. At first, Celine would nibble at the food politely and say things like, "Oh, how quaint, the way you say it about a museum gift shop." Then the comments grew sharper. "Do we have to eat on these again?" she'd sigh, tapping a fork against the plate with a tiny frown. "They're sweet, but maybe it's time for something more modern. If we're going to host real events here one day. One day. Here." Lucas would laugh softly, not looking at me. "Celine's just thinking ahead, Ma. You know how it is. This place could be incredible with the right upgrades." Open concepts, better lighting. It's too much house for you anyway. It startled me the first time he said it. Too much house. Like I was a guest who'd overstayed. Like 40 years of cooking and crying and keeping this roof alive wasn't a reason to be here. I'd try to push back lightly, like you do when you hope you're misunderstanding. This house is full of your father, I said once, my voice trembling before I could steady it. Your childhood. Your sister's. It's not a project. It's a home. Lucas smiled, that smile he uses in boardrooms. Sentiment doesn't pay property taxes, Ma. We've got to be practical. Practical. Another word that can be a blanket or a weapon.
Their disrespect didn't stay at the dinner table. It seeped into daylight like a slow leak. If a faucet dripped, Lucas would sigh as if I'd handed him the moon to carry. If my roses grew a little wild in spring, the same roses my husband planted with so much care, Celine would wrinkle her nose and call the garden messy, embarrassing, something the neighbors whispered about. Mariah tried to soften it. The roses are beautiful, Celine, she'd say. Always in that careful, trembling voice, as if she stood between two storms. But sometimes she echoed them, her words quiet but cutting. Maybe a smaller place would be easier for you, Mom. Those words hurt more than Selena's. Selena didn't love me. She had no power to wound me deeply. But Mariah, when she suggested shrinking my life for her brother's comfort, it felt like a tiny betrayal pressed straight into the heart. The gaslighting began slowly. Celine would be in the spare room, digging through boxes. When I confronted her, she'd tilt her head and say, "Oh, you told me last week you wanted the attic cleared. Don't you remember? The attic." A word that would soon haunt me. Lucas stopped calling it home and began calling it the property. I'd hear him pacing the hallway saying, "Once we renovate, it'll be worth triple." I'd stand there holding laundry like a forgotten shadow. They watched me constantly, not with love, with calculation, measuring each pause, each slow step, each forgotten word. Their concern felt like a mask they'd borrowed. Still, I tried to stand tall. I raised you two alone. I told Lucas when he suggested assisted living. I ran a home and a life while you were learning to tie your shoes. I'm not helpless just because my hair is gray. Lucas laughed as if I'd told a joke. Ma, don't get emotional. We're just worried. We have to think about what's best for everyone. Everyone. That word slipped in like a thief. The real turning point came on a Friday in late June. Warm enough that the air felt thick like honey. Celine swept into my kitchen with that bright managerial tone people use when they've already made a decision and are just informing you of your role. "Good news," she said. "Lucas is doing a small reception here tomorrow. Pre-gala thing. Important clients. We'll keep it intimate. You won't lift a finger." I stared at her over my coffee cup. "A party? In my house? You didn't ask." Lucas came in behind her looking shifty, like a teenager sneaking in after curfew. Celine thought it would be strategic, more personal. "Don't worry about it, Ma. We'll handle everything. This is still my home," I said. I could hear the tremor in my voice like a fault line. "And I'm not up for a party." Selena's smile hardened. "Gloria, please don't be difficult. It's just a few hours. Think of Lucas's career. Besides, we need to see how the space flows for entertaining. It'll be good for you to get used to change." Change. Another word. Another soft knife. They argued like a pair of wolves circling a tired deer. Lucas booming over my objections. Celine slicing at me with little remarks, how I didn't understand the stakes, how I was stuck in the past. When I called Mariah, hoping she would come stand beside me, her voice had that defeated tilt I'd been hearing more often. "Mom, just let them do it," she said. "It's easier than fighting. You know how Lucas is." Easier for whom? The next day my living room turned into a showroom. Caterers rolled in stainless steel trays. Florists filled vases I didn't recognize with flowers that smelled expensive and cold. Celine moved my husband's old framed photos to make room for modern sculptures she'd rented. As if my love story was clutter, I was moving one of Robert's roses, the last blooms from a stubborn bush he'd planted for our anniversary, when my foot caught on the edge of the rug. Just a small slip. A wobble. I corrected instantly. But Celine sucked in a dramatic breath. "Oh my God. Gloria, you almost fell." Lucas rushed over, all exaggerated concern. "Ma, you see, this is what we're talking about. This house isn't safe for you. You could seriously hurt yourself." "I'm fine," I snapped, embarrassed by how sharp I sounded. "No," Celine said softly. But her hand gripped my elbow with surprising strength. "You need to rest somewhere quiet. Out of the way." so you don't get overwhelmed with all these preparations. Somewhere safe. Lucas nodded, his eyes meeting hers for a quick coded flicker. The attic might be best. It's peaceful. You can lie down. We'll bring you tea. The attic. The word dropped into my stomach like ice. The attic was not a room you rested in. It was a narrow, dusty crawlspace with steep stairs, filled with boxes of our life. Robert's army trunk, Mariah's childhood drawings, Lucas's first baseball glove, my wedding dress sealed in plastic because I couldn't bear to throw it away. It was my memory vault, my sanctuary, not a sick room. I'm not going up there, I said. It's for your own good, Lucas replied, firm, patronizing, the same tone he used when he thought he was the parent. Important people are coming. We can't have you stressed or tripping around. Please, Ma, don't make this hard. Mariah appeared in the doorway, then, her face pale, eyes wide with something like terror. Maybe she should just sit in her room, she whispered. Celine shot her a look sharp enough to cut. Mariah, don't start. We know what's best for your mother. I tried to pull away, but my joints weren't what they used to be, and their hands were relentless. Gentle, yes, but gentle like a tide that doesn't ask if you want to be moved. They steered me up the stairs, step after narrow step. The air cooled, thickened with dust and the smell of old paper. I felt my heart banging against my ribs. Inside, the attic looked different in daylight, still cluttered, still shadowed, but now it felt predatory. Lucas opened the door wide like a host. There you go, Ma, he said almost cheerfully. Nice and quiet. We'll check on you soon. Before I could gather a full scream, before I could turn the fear into a weapon, they ushered me inside. The door swung shut. I heard the latch click. Then, I heard another sound, smaller, more final. A key turning. Panic is not graceful. It doesn't care how old you are or what stories you've survived. It rose in me like a fire. Lucas, I shouted, rattling the doorknob. Open this door right now. No answer, just their muffled voices downstairs. The thump of music coming alive. I pounded the door until my palms burned. I screamed until my throat peeled raw. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard laughter below, glasses clinking in my living room. Strangers' voices floating up through my ceiling like smoke. They didn't bring me tea. They didn't check on me. Had I been a dog, they would have treated me with more decency. There was a bottle of water on a dusty trunk, a sleeve of stale crackers. As if they'd remembered I was human only long enough to toss scraps up to the attic like feeding a trapped raccoon. Night came early up there. The small window only showed treetops and a slice of moon. The house creaked as it settled. That old familiar music turned suddenly into something sinister. Shadows bent at odd angles. My bones grew cold from the floorboards, and humiliation burned hotter than fear. I lay in my husband's old moth-eaten armchair with my knees pulled to my chest, and I listened to the party below. Their laughter rose in waves. Every burst of it was a fresh stab. I pictured Celine gliding around my living room in a white dress, playing queen in my kingdom. I pictured Lucas shaking hands, proud of the stage he'd built using my life as lumber, and for the first time, a terrible thought rooted itself in me, quiet but deadly. What if they don't let me out? The second night, when the music had died and the guests had gone and the house downstairs went still, my fear became something colder, not panic anymore. Strategy. Survival does that to you. It turns screaming into thinking. I started searching through the boxes with stiff fingers, moving old blankets, dragging out trunks. The attic was a map of our past, and in that map, I remembered something. Robert's emergency phone. My husband was old school, in the stubborn way. He never trusted shiny new gadgets. He kept a heavy brick-like prepaid cell phone in his army trunk just in case, charging it every few months. After he died, I sealed the trunk up here because it hurt too much to look at his uniforms and medals. I found it under a folded flag. My hands shook as I pressed the power button. The screen flickered alive. 2 bars of battery. I almost sobbed. I called Mrs. Donnelly across the street, my friend, for 30 years. The kind who waters your plants when you're sick, and tells you the truth when you're being stupid. She answered, sleepy. Hello, Martha, I whispered, using the old code name we'd invented years ago for emergencies. My voice was sandpaper. It's me. There might be a gas smell in the house. I'm a little confused, and I can't get Lucas's attention. Could you come look? Maybe call someone. A gas leak is a soundless alarm. No one ignores it. Martha didn't ask questions. She didn't hesitate. Oh, sweetheart, she said, sharp with concern, stay put. Don't touch anything. I'm coming. I'll call the gas company. I waited with my cheek against the attic door, listening. 20 minutes later, maybe 30. Time turns to syrup when you're trapped. I heard voices downstairs. Martha's no-nonsense bark, a deeper man's voice, footsteps, then Lucas's, high and flustered. Ma, are you up there? The key turned again. The door opened. Lucas stood there breathing hard like he'd climbed a mountain. Celine hovered behind him, her face arranged into a mask of shocked concern. Mariah peeked around them, ghost. Oh my God, Ma, Lucas said. We were so worried. Martha said she smelled gas. We thought you were resting in your room. You must have wandered up here and the door latched. We've been frantic. Celine rushed in with a hand to her chest. Gloria, darling, you scared us half to death. You locked yourself in. Are you all right? You look so frail. They thought I was going to explode. They were ready for it. Instead, I let my shoulders sag. I let my eyes drift unfocused. I leaned heavily against a trunk. Lucas, I rasped. What happened? You said I should rest up here, didn't you? After I slipped, I must have fallen asleep. I looked around, pretending bewilderment. How long was I up here? Their eyes met in a quick flash of relief. They believed the role they'd written for me was now real. Mariah ran to me and hugged me, sobbing. Her hands trembled on my back. I patted her gently while my heart stayed stone. The responders checked the house, found no leak, and left. Martha's eyes found mine over Selena's shoulder sharp, knowing. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. She'd understood what I couldn't say aloud. They tucked me into my bed that night like I was a child, cooing apologies for not checking in sooner. Celine even brought me soup. It tasted like surrender and salt. When they finally left, when the house was quiet and I could hear the refrigerator hum again, I lay staring at the ceiling and felt something new settling into me. Not just rage, resolve. They had locked me away like I was rubbish. They had tried to erase me, so I decided to become invisible in the way that scares greedy people most. I would let them think I was fading, and while they watched me disappear, I would sharpen my teeth. The next week I asked Mariah to help me order a few things online because my mind's not what it used to be, honey, and Celine keeps saying I should practice technology. I said it with a small, helpless laugh. I added a voice-activated recorder to the cart. Tiny. Plain. The kind you can hide under yarn. 4 doctor appointments. I told her, so I don't forget instructions. Guilt made her eager. She clicked buy without a second thought. When the package arrived, I practiced with it at night, learned its range, its sensitivity, the way it lit up when voices rose. I didn't trust my children anymore, but I trusted my hands. They had survived raising babies and burying a husband and holding a job together with tape and faith. They could learn a recorder. Then I started collecting truth. I waited for moments when Selena's guard was down, when Lucas's arrogance slipped loose from his collar, when Mariah's guilt made her honest. I caught Lucas in my husband's old study one afternoon, pacing with a tape measure like a man mapping conquest. Lucas, I said softly, my voice trembling on purpose. I've been thinking. That attic weekend. I'm still foggy about it. You were trying to keep me safe, weren't you? He straightened, puffing with righteousness. Exactly, Ma. You were a liability with those clients here. We couldn't risk you getting emotional. The attic was just a temporary solution. Out of sight, out of mind, so you could rest and we could handle things properly. It was for the best. Out of sight, out of mind. My recorder drank it up. I baited Celine by praising her taste, asking what she imagined for the future of the house. Her eyes lit like a cash register. This place would be gorgeous once we clear out all this stuff, she said, waving at my life as if it were lint. That party was basically a test run. We saw how it could work once we have more freedom. Once Lucas is fully in control. Open the layout, modernize everything, make it a proper home. Proper home. As if my home had been improper because I still lived inside it. Then Mariah. My hardest recording, because her tears were real. I asked her one night, in a small voice, if I'd been too much trouble. She folded into my arms and confessed. I heard you calling, Mom, she sobbed. I did, but Lucas said not to go up. He said it would only make you more agitated. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stand up to them. That one lodged in my chest like a thorn. I didn't edit their voices to make them sound worse. I didn't need to. Greed makes its own music. I just stored each file on my old laptop in a folder named Recipes because I didn't trust anything obvious anymore. Weeks passed. I became a quiet ghost on purpose. I misplaced glasses that were on my head. I asked simple questions twice. I let them smirk and pat me and call me sweet old thing. Every time they did it, I felt the net tightening. When I suggested we hold our annual family barbecue at my house, One last big gathering. Lucas and Celine agreed instantly. They thought it was proof I'd submitted. They never once imagined I was setting a stage. The day came bright and hot. The kind of summer afternoon that makes the world feel too alive for tragedy. My backyard filled with family cousins, grandkids, neighbors who'd become kin. Plates appeared. Children shrieked. The roses bloomed stubbornly, as if my husband's hands were still in the soil. Lucas arrived booming and generous, carrying a lavish fruit basket, like a prop. Celine air-kissed my cheek and surveyed the yard as if she were already planning a remodel. Mariah hovered at the edge of conversations, her smile strained, like a girl holding her breath underwater. I watched them all for hours, watched Lucas shake hands, watched Celine charm faces, watched Mariah flinch every time she looked at me. They were comfortable, safe inside their lies. As the sun lowered and shadows stretched long across the grass, I tapped my cane against a table. "Can everyone come close a moment?" I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but family has always listened to me, even when my own kids forgot how. A hush settled. Plates paused mid-air. Faces turned. I stood slowly, leaning heavier on my cane than I needed to. The Bluetooth speaker sat on the picnic table like a small black heart. My recorder was in my palm, warm from the sun. "Thank you for being here," I said. "This house has held us through so much joy, grief, births, funerals, everything. This year I wanted to share something special. A family tribute. A little recording I made." Lucas frowned. Selena's smile tightened. Mariah went still. I pressed play. Lucas's voice filled the yard first, smug and clear. "You were a liability, out of sight, out of mind. For the best." Gasps scattered through the crowd like startled birds. Then Selena's voice, cool as a knife on marble. "That party was a test run. Once Lucas is fully in control, clear out all this stuff." Celine shot to her feet. "Turn that off. That's private." Her words drowned in the rumble of outrage rising around her. Then Mariah's tearful confession, "I heard you calling. Lucas said not to go up." Mariah covered her mouth and sobbed. I let the rest play. Not long. Just enough. Their own truth, their own voices, lined up like witnesses. Silence fell after the last file. Not a gentle silence. The kind that comes before a storm breaks. My brother-in-law, old Mr. Watkins, stood with a slow, terrible calm. "Lucas," he said, voice low, "you locked your mother in an attic." Lucas's mouth opened and closed. It wasn't like she was confused. My cousin snapped. "Those tapes didn't sound confused. They sounded like you two planning a takeover." People who had loved Lucas and Celine looked at them like strangers. Someone muttered, "Disgusting." Someone else said, "After all she did." My niece started crying from shock. The backyard turned into a courtroom without walls. Lucas tried to bluster. Celine tried to hiss about betrayal and privacy. Their words fell dead in the grass. Greed has no language that survives daylight. And then something I didn't expect. My family moved toward me. One by one, they came like a tide that was finally on my side. "You're coming with me tonight," my cousin said, gripping my hand. "No way you sit alone after this." "We've got you, Auntie," my nephew said, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. Warmth gathered around me, fierce and protective, and for the first time since Robert died, I felt like a matriarch again instead of a burden. Lucas and Celine left in the chaos, because shame, when it's real, makes cowards. Mariah stayed behind, shaking, her face split between grief and relief. The aftermath wasn't loud. Justice rarely is. It's mostly paperwork and distance and reality setting in like winter. Lucas's reputation cracked. Word traveled, not as gossip but as warning. Some of his clients disappeared quietly. Selena's charity friends stopped returning calls. Their social life withered because people don't like to sit at a table with someone who locks their mother in an attic. I met with a lawyer and rewrote my will again, this time with a steadiness that felt like a clean cut. Lucas and Celine were removed. Their names left the page like stains wiped away. Assets went to my grandchildren, to the women's shelter, to the clinic where I worked, to a small scholarship for kids who loved books the way my husband had loved fixing engines. Mariah came to me a week later. Alone, eyes swollen. She sat at my kitchen table like the child she'd once been, palms flat, and confessed without excuses. "I let it happen," she whispered. "I was scared of him. Of her. I hate myself for it. I studied my daughter. I loved her, yes. But love doesn't mean unbreaking trust, like a twig and pretending it's a tree. I don't know what forgiveness looks like yet." I told her. "But if it ever comes, it will come from what you do next, not what you say now. She nodded like someone swallowing a stone. She left the door open to something fragile. I reclaimed my house slowly. I put Robert's photos back where they belonged. I brought my roses into the living room, one vase at a time, until the air smelled like memory and home again. I started letting friends drop by without warning, just because I could. I formed a little book circle at the library. I laughed in my kitchen without fearing who was listening. Sometimes, I still flinch when I pass the attic stairs, not because the door is locked, it never will be again, but because some wounds live in your muscles. They taught me that, but they also taught me something else. There is a kind of revenge that doesn't rot you from the inside, the kind where you don't become cruel in return. You just become clear. You stop offering your life as a stage for someone else's greed. If you're hearing my voice right now and you're old enough to feel your bones hum when the weather changes, know this: the world will try to shrink you into something convenient. Even the people you love might try. Don't confuse your softness with weakness. Don't confuse your fatigue with surrender. You have earned the right to be in your own home, in your own mind, on your own terms. And if you're younger, if you're someone's child, hear me too. One day, if you're lucky, you will need gentleness. You will need patience. You will need someone to see you as a person, even when you move slower. Plant that kindness now, because the harvest comes for all of us. I used to believe motherhood meant dying for your children in 1,000 invisible ways and calling it love. I still believe in love, but now I believe love also means choosing not to disappear when someone demands it. My son wanted me silenced. He wanted me small. He wanted me stored away like an inconvenient box in the dark. Instead, I spoke. Instead, I lived now. When the evening settles and my house grows quiet. It's a quiet that feels like peace, not exile. I sit by my window with tea that tastes faintly of chamomile and stubbornness, watching the lilac bush sway in the dusk. I think of Robert's hands in the garden. I think of the woman I was at 47, terrified and determined, and the woman I am now, wrinkled. Yes, but unbent. Some losses never stop aching. A mother doesn't stop being a mother just because her child turns cruel. That ache is the ghost I'll carry until I'm done walking this earth. But I carry something else with it. A calm, quiet pride that I did not let my ending be written in someone else's greedy ink. I wrote it myself, and in the last soft minutes of a day, as the light thins and the house breathes around me, I feel Robert's old dream still holding steady under my feet. Not because my children honored it, because I did.